So let's get started. Okay, if you've never picked up a guitar before and you want to just try out an amp or try out a guitar, here's one thing that you can do, and at least it'll sound like you're playing a chord and you sort of have something going on. It's very easy. All you do is take your first finger and put it on this 5th string on the 2nd fret with your left hand. And the right hand, you're going to use the pick the way I told you before and pick the first 2 strings. Actually, it's the lowest 2 strings here, that's string number 6, the E string, and string number 5, the A string. All you have to do is hit them both at the same time, and you get this. You can pick it a bunch of times. Like that, and to change it, it's really pretty easy. All you have to do is take that exact same fingering and move it across 1 string. So take it off the A string, the 5th string, and put it onto the D string, which is the 4th string, and this time only play these 2 strings with your right hand, the 5th string and the 4th string together. Then you have a different chord. These are probably the 2 most basic chords in rock, and they're used all the time. And it's just that simple. So you can change back and forth like this. That should be your very first exercise, and those 2 chords are going to come up forever, so just get used to them. They're simple. If you want to play guitar, there's one thing you definitely have to know, and that is the name of all the strings. There's only 6 of them, so it's pretty easy. The lowest string is called E, or the 6th string. Sometimes they call it the low E because it's the lowest sounding string that we have. Okay, the 5th string is A, the 4th string is D, the 3rd string is G, 2nd string is B, and 1st string is also E, just like the 6th string, but they call this the high E because it's got a higher sound. Another thing you definitely need to know is to find out the names of the notes on the fretboard. You have to be able to find them out. You have to know the system, and it's a very easy system. It just takes a little memorizing, okay? The only thing you really need to know is kind of the musical alphabet, and that goes E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. And that's the whole thing. You might have noticed that there's no E sharp and there's no B sharp. You just skip right over that and go to the next letter. So let me give you an example of how to find these notes, starting with the 6th string on the low E string. Okay, check it out. So open like this. That's E. F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Back to E. So the low open E string, 6th string is E. Way up here on the 12th fret is E again. So these notes up here, it just starts the whole same system all over again. E, F, F sharp, G, and so on. And for all the other strings, it's exactly the same way, except on the 5th string, which is the A string, you start A sharp, B, C, and so on. So you don't have to memorize every single note on here, but you do have to know how to find the notes. So if somebody says, what's this note? You can just go, oh, well, that's E, F, F sharp, G. That's all you need to know. You need to know how to find the notes. So go for it. Okay, one thing that is absolutely essential to rock guitar playing is the bar chord. And this is kind of an abbreviated version of a bar chord. It's actually easier to play than a bar chord, and it's used actually more commonly than a bar chord. It's kind of a half of a bar chord, but it's we call it a power chord in rock and roll, but you guys can call it whatever you want. Basically, you take those simple chords that I showed you at the beginning, those one-finger chords like this. Instead of using your first finger for those, let's use your second finger. Exactly the same thing. Okay, let's name these chords. This one is going to be E, because it's partially based on the low E string. And this one is going to be A, because it's partially based on the A string. So you've got two chords. This is E, this is A. Now you name these chords moving all the way up exactly the same way as you named the notes on the fretboard. For example, this will be E. If you move everything up one fret, it's going to be F, one fret F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and so on. And the same thing goes for the A string. A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D. You really have to practice that and get it down. It won't take long, but you'll be doing this for a long time. Okay, there's some other basic chords that you need to know. And at first they sound kind of like folk music or country music. They sound real open and kind of twangy, and they're not really as inspiring as those rock chords that I just showed you, but you definitely have to learn them, and they sound good when you're playing kind of mellow stuff and pop songs and ballads and stuff like that, and you can even fit them in rock and heavy metal too. So you have to know them, but just get past the original sound of them and you'll be fine. Let's start with a G chord. Your left hand should be like this, and you strum all 6 strings. Next will be a D chord, and fingers one at a time would be like this. This here, and that there. And you only strum the highest 4 strings. Next chord would be E minor, and this is a really easy one. Use your second and third finger like this, and strum all 6 strings. Next one is C, and you put your fingers down like that, and then you strum the highest 5 strings, leaving the low 6th string out. Okay, next chord is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit difficult to hold your fingers all down at the same time, but you'll get used to it after a while. It's called an F chord, and it looks like this. You strum the highest 4 strings, and then you put your hand down like this. And the hard part is getting your first finger to hold these 2 strings down at the same time. It's kind of tough, but a little practice and your finger will get used to it. Okay, next chord is an E chord. The one before I showed you was an E minor chord. This one is actually an E major chord. And this one is very useful. I'll show you why in a minute. Looks like this. One at a time, your fingers go down like that, and you strum all 6 strings. And while I'm talking about this, another good habit to keep in mind is not let your knuckle bend down like that. Make sure your knuckle stands up as best as it can. Anyway, the reason why this E chord is so important is you can turn this into full bar chords like this. That would be E, F, F sharp, G, and so on all the way up and down the neck the way I showed you before with those mini bar chords. And this last one that I'll show you is A. Now with your third finger, just hold down these strings, the 4th string, the 3rd string, and the 2nd string, and pick the 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. Now the same thing goes with this A chord when you're making bar chords. A sharp, B, C. So to play a full bar chord, this looks like an E chord, right? This form is called the E form bar chord because this chord is basically made out of an E form. E, F, F sharp, G. This is made out of an A form, so it goes A sharp, B, C. That's all you need to know. Those are the most basic chords, and you definitely have to know them. All right, to play rhythm in a song, you're going to need to strum the chords, and there's a lot of different ways to strum the chords. And I'll give you two examples, one for more of a pop, kind of light rock style of strumming chords, and one for more heavy jamming rock, heavy metal type of thing. That style of strumming, it's a little bit different. So let's do both of those. First, we'll start with the basic guitar strumming style. We'll use the G chord, which we learned earlier, and then I'll show you some other chords to change. Okay, now let's change from G to D. Now the idea of changing chords is to go from one to the other as smooth as possible. Now when you change, you want all your fingers on your left hand to go at once if you possibly can. I know it's not going to do like that immediately. Your fingers are going to want to move slowly, but with time and with practice it will get there. So let's go from G to D. Another kind of strumming is a more heavy right hand type of strumming, and this is kind of used in heavy rock and kind of punk rock and heavy metal, and it's a real common way to strum heavy rock chords. You need to turn up the gain a little bit on your amp for this, or use a distortion box. But let's play those same two chords, G and D, and you'll hear the difference. Now watch my right hand closely. Okay, the idea is to change chords smoothly like that, also with these bar chords, but when you use your right hand with all downstrokes, it has kind of a more punk sound to it. And I'll give you one more example of that really quickly. Just the same thing faster, and you'll understand what I mean. That's basically what you should work your strumming up to. And it's really not that hard to move your right hand that fast. The whole thing is getting your left hand to change chords smoothly. But little practice, you can do it. All right, most songs are made up out of chord progressions or chord changes. It's just putting chords in a particular order that makes the song the way you want it to be. To play songs, you have to be able to change chords smoothly. And the easy way to do that is to practice with these bar chords. Okay? Let's start with the E form bar chord and go to the A form bar chord. And back and forth, really slow. And then move up. Okay, so once you got that done, do the same thing going backwards. It takes a little working on because your fingers don't want to move that quickly, so definitely take the time and get used to moving from this form to this form. A good way to make use of your basic chords is to arpeggiate them, which means pick them one note at a time. And often this is really good for moody songs where you've got a really soulful vocal going over a really kind of sad kind of guitar part. I'll give you an example using the chords that we already know. Watch my right hand as I pick going all the way down and all the way up in a rhythm. We'll start with some simple chords like this. That type of thing should be done with all the chords that you know. And just pick up and down, and slow as even as you possibly can. One thing you need to do sometimes when you're playing rhythm is mute the strings. And by muting, I mean deaden the strings enough so you still hear the note, but it has kind of really muffled sound. Now the way to do this is by taking your right palm and kind of tightly holding it down onto your string so the notes don't really ring out that well. Let me give you an example of muting. See what my right hand did that time? Now watch, I'm going to do the same thing without muting and watch the difference. Listen to the difference as well. Can you hear it sounds much more open and much bigger? So here's the exercise what I want you to do. I'm going to go back and forth from muting to not muting. Watch my right hand and watch the palm. Now you're going to have to get your tuners back out for this one. This is a technique called detuning, and it's really common in ultra heavy music. And the thing to do is get your tuner out and take your low E string and tune it down until the D light on your tuner lights up. And once the D light on your tuner lights up, tune it normally to D so the meter reads exactly in the middle and the lights all light up evenly, just like I showed you with the other strings. So it's going to sound something like this. So your E string is going to sound really low, but the good thing about that is you can play chords totally simply with like one finger or even no fingers. Check this out. Totally easy, but sounds really heavy and very manly. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples of some phrases that are typical to particular styles of music. Like in rock music, a real common phrase is to take like one of those mini bar chords and strum it like this. Now all you need to do is strum the 6th string and the 5th string straight over and over like that, and then alternate with your little finger stretching out to here like that, which at the beginning is kind of a stretch, but you will get used to it. So a rock pattern would look something like this. Now the same exact chords, if you were in a heavy metal band, would be played a little bit differently. It looks something like this. You'd get rid of this thing with your little finger and you would slide back and forth with these chords. Let me show you. And also with your right hand, you would kind of hold the strings a little bit tighter to give it a more clamped down kind of sound. You'll see what I mean. Check it out. That's really a typical heavy metal kind of guitar playing. I mean, it's very easy on the left hand, and the right hand is holding the strings down kind of tight so the notes are kind of deadened a little bit. Now, if you're like in an alternative band or something like that, more of a kind of modern rock or pop music, what they like to do a lot in that type of music is use a lot of open strings, so the strings kind of clang around and jangle a lot and give it a real kind of a not a folky sound, but just a real kind of open string sound of guitar, and that's become real popular lately. And if you were to take those same two chords, which were A and B, and play it in an alternative style, you might use a strumming style like this and these two chords. Check it out.